Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Charlie Crawford Podcast. I'm here at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada, and today I have my good buddy Tyler Worley on the podcast. We're going to talk about the two huge topics going on at this year's NFR. One is a shooting that took place at the UNLV campus less than a half a mile from the Thomas Mack, where all the rodeo contestants were in the building practicing for the grand entry, and what it was like and what dominoed after that tragic event. Then we're going to go into the details of how Tyler was caught in the eye of the storm as the PRCA was back and forth trying to get the top 15 healers picked in less than 2 weeks before the NFR. I've known Tyler for many years now. He was one of the coolest young healers coming up when I was competing. I remember him always riding good horses. He roped really good, had a great attitude, and a great storyteller with a huge personality. Tyler comes from Berryville, Arkansas, now lives in Morgan Mill, Texas. At 30 years of age, he has competed at the NFR in 2019, placing in 3 rounds, winning 4th in the average, winning $71,000 at that year's NFR with Tate Kirkenslager. In 2020, he was one of 15 healers ever to compete at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas when the NFR was held there during COVID, and roped with Jeff Flanagan, placing in 6 rounds, winning 2nd in the average, and winning over $100,000 that year at the NFR. This year, Tyler is headed to his 3rd NFR, but not without controversy. Hey, this is Charlie. I switched gears from a professionally competing team roper to building my brand in order to educate and inspire. My new website will be the foundation for this new venture, Charlie Crawford Training. I will be showcasing the variety of clinics I'm teaching in the upcoming years, opportunities to host one of my clinics, podcasts, videos, articles, gear, and other content on my site, charliecrawfordtraining.com. I need you to head over there and enter your email in the prompt on my new website. That way I can keep you updated on my new offerings and you can stay in the know. That's www.charliecrawfordtraining.com. Get your email in there and keep roping for the pay window. Tyler, good to have you, buddy.
Good to be here.
Well, man, before we get to all the specifics of the 2023 season and what all went down, how about what's going on right now? It's Thursday, December 7th, the day of the first round at the NFR, and it's canceled.
Yeah, man.
What happened yesterday? Where were you at? Where did it happen? What all was that day about?
We was actually lined up for grand entry practice, which I carried the flag the last 2 times for Arkansas, and then this year, I mean, I'm not alone. I'm grateful for that. There's a barrel racer, that Tacey Matthews, and she won a lot. And I was lined up kind of behind the Arizona people, just out of, I guess, that's just what I always do. Line up behind Arizona just so I'm not going to get left. And they call Arizona in there, and then they're like, okay, Arkansas. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, I know she's got the flag somewhere. I don't know where she's at. Well, I told a tall lady that's always in the office, what's her name? I can't think of her name. Her husband pops the latch. I know you know who I'm talking about. I can't think of her name. Anyways, I said, look, I'm here, but I know that the barrel racer, Tacey, somewhere, and she's got the flag. And so we have to wait on her. And they holler at her in the tent. So we get in there and we ride down the tunnel, and I'm thinking, we're fixing to...
John and Sandy Guatney.
Sandy, yeah. That's her name. And so we get lined up in the tunnel, and it's just like everything's normal, and people are lining up behind us, and they're calling us in by states. And so we're just sitting down there in the bottom of the tunnel, and they get the pivots. They kind of trot out there in the arena, and then they're like, they're not telling us, anything to do. And they're like, hey, y'all just ride in here. We're like, whatever. And everybody's kind of like, well, crap, we're in trouble. We haven't even done anything yet. Like, what's going on? This is the first time this has ever happened. And so we're all just sitting in there. Mm-hmm. And we sat there for a while, which I don't have social media. I don't have anything. So I have no clue what's going on. Well, everybody's on their phone, looking at all this stuff. And I'm like, man, what the heck? And somebody's like, hey, there's an active shooter on campus. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. And which you don't ever really think about stuff like that happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see it happen,
Right.
but it's like, man, what are the odds of that happening? That's just something that you never even think about. And we were all pretty calm, you know. We were in there, and I felt like that's the safest place we could have been. Like, there was security, obviously, all around the Thomas and Mack. And we're just sitting in there, and then all of a sudden, like, we took our group pictures and stuff
Mm-hmm.
on the buck and shoots and all that, and we got all that done, and we're kind of just sitting there, like, waiting, and they don't really tell us anything. They didn't come over the loudspeakers and tell us there was an active shooter. They just told us there was a situation. But at this point, everybody knew.
Everybody's on their phone.
Everybody's on their phone. They figured it out. So then Randy Corley's got the mic, and he says, hey, everybody on the dirt, in the arena floor, right now, get out of the stands. And Randy's a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, hey, right now. And I'm like, man, something's going on. And so we're just still sitting there, and everybody is on the dirt. And then you can see up in the concourse, in the doorways, there's some police officers, and they've got ARs. I mean, they're packing. And they come in there, and they would kind of walk down the steps and just kind of look around and then turn around and walk back up there. And you could see they were working their way. And Randy told us, you know, these guys are going to clear the building. We need everybody out of the stands. And they get up there behind us, and I hear somebody yell, hey, get on the ground now. Hands on your head, or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it wasn't like he saw a kid up there or something like that. Like, this seems like a real situation. And I look up there, and I see one of the cops has his gun drawn. So I know immediately, I'm like, hey, there's somebody in here. Either maybe it was a worker, maybe they didn't speak English, maybe they just didn't know to get out of the stands. But I'm thinking, in this situation, I'm probably going to get out of the stands. I don't want to get shot. I don't want to be in these guys' way. Like, they're trying to do their job. Well, not too long after this happens, this lady walks down, and I can't remember if she was the police chief or what, but she introduced herself, and she said, you know, there's an active situation going on. We believe the safest exit for you guys is through the tunnel, and we would like for you guys to exit the building. So a lot of people were off their horses and stuff, and maybe it's because I'm a hillbilly or whatever. I'm like, for one, this is my favorite horse in the world. He's not my shield. If anything, I'm scattering if something happens. So,
and they're going to have to hit a shooting target, and my horse is faster than I am.
And I'm not going to be running straight. And
you go back to Young Guns now, like Billy the Kid.
Yes, this is Red Dead Redemption all over. Like, it's going to get, we are going to scatter if this happens. Like, I have trained for this my whole life.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be from Arkansas.
Yes.
You guys have been waiting for this for a while.
I've went through a lot rougher country than this, I promise. And so I'm sitting next to Coulter Todd, and he kind of looks at me, and he said, which he doesn't say much.
Right.
You know, I think a lot of that guy.
Yeah.
He's one of my heroes.
Yeah,
you know.
dang right.
And he said, just out of curiosity, are you shook up about this? And I was like, man, you know, obviously it's a terrible situation. You don't ever want to see something like that happen. But I said, the way I see it, it's out of our control.
Yeah.
I mean, you see situations like this, and you just kind of got to navigate them the best way you know how. And
where was Brittany and your little boy is Audie? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So he's 10 months old.
Nine months old.
And where were they at?
They had so this is what gave me peace about the whole deal. In this situation, I wasn't so much worried about myself. I told Bambi after all this was over, I said, hey, look, I know where I'm headed. If this is how I'm supposed to go out, there's not so much I can do.
Yeah.
You know, literally there's 100 some people packed in this Thomas and Mack. If somebody comes in there and starts shooting,
you're ducks in a barrel.
They can accidentally hit somebody. At that, I mean, really, it's just so dangerous.
Yeah.
And so they actually, my mom and dad and my aunt, they went and picked them up when Brittany and Audie. Me and Audie rode one horse around, and Brittany rode the other one for a while before grand entry practice. And then they went with my parents, and they went to Walmart and doing all kinds of stuff. They were already across town. Whenever I heard about this, I called Brittany, and I said, hey, you know, you guys don't come back over here. There's something going on. Y'all just stay away. And so they did, and they were fine. They were a long ways away. But we ended up kind of filing out of there, and which a lot of the people, with their families, like I kind of felt like they probably needed to go first.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of, when everybody filed out, we just rode out, and it was crazy because Logan, when we was sitting in there, he said, "Man, this is the longest amount of time I've ever spent in here." And it was crazy because that's a place that you dream about being.
Mm-hmm.
It's so special to be in that building, and then under those circumstances, it's like, man, this doesn't matter right now.
Yeah.
This doesn't matter at all. And the same way with them canceling the rodeo, not canceling, they postponed it.
So how did the domino effect? So now how is the NFR going to be going forward, supposedly? What's the latest you've heard on how they're going to run it?
And actually, I just got a text from Driggers he in the Healers chat or whatever, and the last thing I heard was Friday night, tomorrow is the first round.
Okay.
And then on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, I think that would be the 6th round. They're going to run it at 10 o'clock that morning, and they might let some family in or whatever. I think they're going to try to smoke through it that morning, and then it'll just go in order. So
that's going to be wild.
That's so
the
crazy.
Amount of money they lost in ticket sales
somebody
there.
Told
Flights.
me Mary
Smokes.
Jane Carpenter, she works for Resistance. She's worked there for as long as I can remember, and she told me this morning, I was over there visiting with her, and she said that they said they were going to lose $2 million just from not opening that up.
Man,
that's so crazy. It's crazy to have almost a slack at the National Finals Rodeo.
That is no kidding.
Which under these circumstances, I mean, how else do you do it? It's almost disrespectful to, like, you can't have all that happen yesterday and then be like, well, I'm sorry guys, but we're gonna have a rodeo. Like, no, you can't.
It's a crime scene, so they're gonna have to case the place and do all that. Yeah. I tell you what, yesterday we were at the Breakaway National Finals in South Point, and when I was going through the stands, just talking to some people, and they were telling me about it and what happened.
Yeah.
And my kids, I had Journey was with Hope T in one convention center, and Creed was with his grandpa and grandma in another convention center. And so if anyone's out there and you see me, I didn't mean to be rude.
Yeah.
I wanted my eyes on my kids.
Yes.
I went and found them and went and found both of them, and I kept them in front of me. It was like I kept my eye on where the exit was, where a cover was, and as a dad,
it puts stuff in perspective for sure. And that's like I said, that was the one thing that
it had
made
that COVID feel again a little bit.
It did.
The fact that something's a little bit bigger than what was normal.
Yeah.
And when you're canceling the NFR, that's never happened.
No, and that's what's so crazy about this whole deal. It's like, we were sitting there and we're like, man, I cannot believe this is happening. Because, you think about a situation like that, and when somebody, I don't know what would cause somebody to want to do something like that, but you have to know. Like,
it's good that we don't.
Yes.
We don't even want to know what that guy was thinking.
I guess when you wake up that morning, you have to know, like, this is not going to end well for me. No. This is how I go out here.
Supposedly, I think he was a 60-year-old. He was a college instructor from back east, and maybe didn't get the job. I think is what I read.
That's what I understood.
Shot 3 people and killed them. I think they were workers at the UNLV. I don't think they were kids. I heard they were maybe staff or something like that, and then wounded another one. But
that's so crazy.
And then they shot him and killed him, so we won't know. I mean, there's going to be conspiracy theories out the rear out of this.
We might never know. What?
Yeah, but just terrible.
It was
something never should happen.
What was scary I say scary for us. I mean, obviously we wasn't in the mix out there on the campus. We was luckily.
But how far away was it?
It was less than a half a mile.
Yeah, from you guys,
and we had no idea. That's what's so scary. We had no idea. There could have been somebody. That's what was scary when they cleared the stands. I thought, you know what? I don't know if maybe that was just somebody that wasn't supposed to be in there, but that could have been the same thing.
Yeah.
And what if that would have been during the performance? I mean, 18,000 people in one tiny area. Like, golly, you just hate to even think about that. But
and for everyone that doesn't know, UNLV is where the Thomas and Mack is on campus.
Yes.
And so when that happened at UNLV campus, like it was a half mile away from where the rodeo's at. That's when things are real.
Yes.
When it's that close.
And we rode back out to the stalls where all the horses are, and everybody was kind of wanting to leave, and the gates were shut, which I was a little nervous about leaving just because I didn't want to get stuck on the roads.
Right.
Just traffic anyways. I just get crazy in traffic. I hate being in traffic, and I'm like, man, I'm going to let this clear out, and I'll stay here with the horses, and then I'll go. And I just kind of sat on my horse for a while in the stalls back there and visited with everybody, and then they opened the gates and people kind of started leaving, and then but man, you could hear sirens, and there was helicopters flying around everywhere. I mean, it was something out of the movies. I mean, something I never thought I would ever be involved in. I mean,
some of the only things happen in the cities, but God don't realize we are in the city.
We are. We are very much in the city right here.
That's what we live in such a bubble, especially being in the Western industry. You being from Arkansas, me being, from Oregon. When I grew up in Prineville, there was nothing going on out there. No. Stephenville is a pretty good bubble there too. In Texas, things don't happen, and then, man, when it does, it's fascinating. Well, let's talk about the 2023 season.
Yeah.
Who all did you rope with this year? You had a few different partners, didn't you?
Yeah. I started, which obviously my season started last October, my circuit finals. Nelson and I roped last year.
Nelson Wyatt?
Yep. So we roped at the Texas Circuit Finals, and we did good there. And
how about the year that dude is having this year?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
He headed like a man this year.
He did a great job, and
wow, he
didn't
just spun them back. He roped a lot of different partners as well this year, a lot of bigger rodeos, and just spun them back for money, and just time after time.
We went all summer. Not all summer, I shouldn't say that. We went till the Spicer Grip, and my wife was pregnant. She was sick. We wasn't winning. Nelson didn't know she was pregnant. We had his truck and my trailer. We're all together. And, it was to the point where, she was getting sick. Mm-hmm. And we was trying to hide it because we hadn't been to the doctor yet. We knew she was pregnant, but we're like, we don't want to say nothing yet just in case. So we get to the Spicer Grip, and it's either we're going to go home or we're going to go to, I believe, Caldwell-ish, maybe Logan, that stuff. We was either going to head out or go home. And I was in a spot where I wasn't going to get into the winter rodeos. I knew I wasn't. So I needed to figure something out. I needed to either finish the year out and try to get enough to get in. I knew I couldn't make the finals, but I'm like, you know what? I got to do something with this year. I don't want to waste a year.
Right.
And we just could not catch. Mm-hmm. I mean, we took turns. We didn't rope good. We had terrible. We just did bad.
Right.
It happens.
It does.
And you hate it when it does, but you got to try to salvage the year. So I called him after the Spicer Grip, and Brittany told me, she's like, look, if you feel like you need to go, you need to go, but I can't. And I'm like, well, that's a no-brainer for me. If you're not going, I'm not going. Because I just felt like in that situation, she was really sick. Mm-hmm. I felt like I needed to be with her.
Yeah.
That was more important to me than being out there just trying to win enough to get into the winter rodeos.
Family before career.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm 10th in the world and I feel like, I'll do what I can and I'll fly back and forth, but I felt like I needed to be home.
Right. In
that situation. And so I called Nelson and I'm like, man, where you at? He's like, oh, I'm at Walmart. And I'm like, thank goodness you haven't left yet. I said, what do you think about just going home? And he's like, man, I am glad you said that. I said, do you think we can get to enough circuit rodeos, make the circuit finals? And he said, I've already mapped it out. We're going to have to do some doctor releasing and some pretty fancy stuff, but we can make it work. Because we had 12 or 13,000 one, but we'd only been to 4 rodeos. So
in the circuit.
Yeah. So I was like, well, if we can do that, you can win 7,000-8,000 at the circuit finals and maybe get to go to Colorado Springs. And I'm like, that needs to be our route. Mm-hmm. And I can go home. I can be home and be with my wife. And so that's what we did. And, man, when we got home, we caught so many steers. We just went and caught. We didn't.
Pressure was off.
Yeah, we didn't worry. We wouldn't put too much pressure on ourselves. Literally, we had to show up at the rodeos. Just be present at 11 rodeos to make the circuit finals. So really, it was like, we just need to get our count. We got enough money to get in, so we just need to get our count. So it was just, honestly, it was so good for us because, like, I had another horse. I don't own him anymore. I sold him, but I really liked him, but I hadn't got to ride him that much. And I took that opportunity and I rode him everywhere. And, man, I got along really good with him, and it was just a great deal. We ended up, we caught a bunch of steers. Our roping got a lot better. You know, we was already planning on not roping together the next year just because, I mean, we just had a bad year.
Right.
And I'm like, man, we need to do something different. We both were on the same page. You know, we're still great friends, but that was the best thing we could have done, and we've talked about that a lot.
So you guys got to enough rodeos. You ended up making all the rodeos for the wintertime. You got qualified for all the winter rodeos this year?
I did not.
You didn't.
So
So who'd you rope with this winter?
I started with Jeff.
Okay. Flanagan?
Yes. I roped with Jeff at Odessa and Denver, and then I entered. So this is where it got weird, as if it already hasn't got weird enough. So Nelson and I had talked about, because Jeff was going to get in Houston and San Antonio already.
Right.
So he maybe roped with Doug at Houston, and we
roped with Dizzle at quite a few rodeos, if I remember, at San Antonio, and they killed him there.
Nelson did.
Mm-hmm.
So they told
Justin
Nelson,
Davis.
yes, they told Nelson he was going to get into San Antonio, because we thought, you know, we were both in the same spot pretty much.
Right.
We're like, hey, if we are not going to get into San Antonio, we'll enter the qualifier together. And I think Jeff roped with Wyatt Cox at San Antonio. And I thought, if nothing else, we'll just, you know, we'll enter that deal together, and then we can go, and we don't want to pull our partners out or whatever. So they told Nelson he was in San Antonio. Well, they told me I was not. So at that point, I didn't really know of anybody that needed a run at the qualifier. So I was like, well, heck, I just won't go. Well, then a guy ended up not going, and Nelson got to go to, in 1 week, Nelson went from going nowhere to getting in Houston, San Antonio, and the timed event.
I remember hearing that.
I mean, it was just like, I said, man, you got busy all of a sudden. And then it was, I don't know what happened. Jackson was supposed to be in San Antonio, and then they called him and said, hey, we messed up. You're not in. So he's like, why? I don't have a partner for the qualifier. Like, and they're like, well, we'll let you enter if you can find a partner. So he called me, and I was like, well, heck, I wasn't going to go, but I mean, yeah, I'd love to go to San Antonio. So I ended up entering the qualifier with Jackson. So I roped with Jeff, Jackson, and then I started roping with Jeff again. Nelson and I roped at Colorado Springs, and we won it. We did good.
Yeah.
And then I started with Jake Clay at Lewiston.
So I was thinking it was getting close to the fall when you guys started.
Yeah. It was just Colin was he didn't get into Puyallup, and I knew Jeff wasn't going to get in, and I called Colin.
So, because you had quite a bit more money won than Jeff.
I did, and I wasn't going to get in. I wasn't going to get into the tour finale with points because I didn't have that many points. I hadn't done great at the tour rodeos for whatever reason, but I got pretty much a bye for winning Colorado Springs. So that's what got me into Puyallup.
Gotcha.
So I knew I was going to get in, and I'd been kind of looking that last week, and I knew Colin probably was on the outside, and I called Colin, which he's a good friend of mine, and I just asked him, I was like, hey, you know, do you think you're going to get in? I said, because I need to find a partner. I just wanted to make sure, you know, what you had going on, and he said, you need to rope with Jake.
He said, sounds just like Vaughn, man. He's such a cool dude.
He said, I don't think I'm going to get in.
Yeah.
You need to rope with Jake. I said, okay. I said, I'll call him. And so Jake and I was planning on roping there, and then I think Ellensburg called and maybe roped his horse's front foot, and he was on the second one. And he didn't really have a chance to make the finals, and he called me that day, and he's like, man, do you think that Jeff would want to go home and I could get you to finish out the year with Jake. He said, because I don't really have a chance. You guys both have a chance. You know, you both have a reason to be out here.
Right.
And it's not like one guy helping the other one out. You know, you both need to be there and you both need to do good. I think that'd be the best move for y'all. And I said,
it's so good for people to hear, because I think so much says the drama, team roping, and guys cutting this and that for whatever reason. But there's a lot of times where the partners will swap. Yeah. Because it's good for both, for the team, and then making an individual team right there for it's good for them.
Well, and a lot of it too was, I told him, you know, I said, Jeff had been to a couple more rodeos than I had because of Houston and something else. Tucson. He went to Tucson. Okay. That was when my kid was due. Oh, yeah. And so I was like, man, I would love to go. I've never been, but I said, I just can't do that. Yeah. It was going to make me a nervous wreck. Yeah. I was nervous before the books opened. I said, I just don't feel right about it. So he had 2 more rodeos than I did. And so we was going to go to Poway and San Bernardino, and it was going to be unofficial for Jeff. Basically, he was going to have to drive from Idaho to California just to help me out.
And for people that don't know, the last 2 weeks is not something you do for financial reasons.
No.
The last 2 weeks is for one reason
points.
only. Yes, you're chasing points.
And no matter how much they cost, you need the points.
You do it. Yeah, and money doesn't matter.
No. And so I told Colin, I said, man, Jeff's going to have to do some silly stuff just to help me out. I said, I will call him. And I said, I think he would probably be good with that.
Bow out, all right.
Yeah. And I called him, and he said, which I hated to ask him to let me rope with Jake at like Pendleton and stuff, because
circuit.
I mean,
but or close. I don't know if it's a circuit or not, but it is close rodeo.
It is. And we actually talked about it, and our last circuit rodeo for our circuit count was Lakeview, Oregon. And I said, Lakeview is number 21. And that's what Jeff said. He said, as long as I can get to enough circuit rodeos, I'm good with it.
Right.
And I said, man, I hate to even ask.
Yeah.
But I said, you won't have to do all the crazy driving. You can just be done and, start back at the circuit finals, whatever. And he's like, no, I'm good with it. He said, that seems like what you need to do. Get after it. So that's when Jake and I started at Lewiston, and we did some good.
Well, I watched Pendleton.
Yeah.
Man, he looked ragged. So it was pretty cool. I was doing a clinic in Arkansas that week during Pendleton. And the first day we're all talking about it. You're battling back. You're in the mix, and you had an abundance amount of support where I was at. Yeah. And so we get done with the clinic on Saturday, and we stop early.
Yeah.
So we can all watch the short round on our phones on the Cowboy Plus app watch and seeing how you finished up. And I tell you what, man, Jay Clay looks stout this year. I watched that run, and he rides good and ropes good anyway. He was a great healer. But when I watched him rope in that pressure situation, he looked so relaxed.
Yeah.
He run up there and, sawed these horns off, was out of his horse's way, and just put that sucker right in your lap. And I'm like, this team looks good.
Yeah.
I liked what I was seeing right there.
Well, and it was so cool. I've told my dad, because he's never got to be out there in the mix in the summer and see what goes on. And I said, man, I've roped on some pretty big stages, but there is nothing like the end of the year needing to win Pendleton short round. The hardest place in the world to try to win something.
Yes, on the grass.
Coming
off that big lane. There's so many variables.
Just
it's
wide
a hard place
open,
to win.
Throw your hand down.
Cowboy crap.
And try to heal them when they turn. And obviously that's my favorite rodeo. It doesn't get any cooler than that.
It's cowboy.
Yeah, it is. And
you love it or you hate it?
I love it.
Because
I entered the trip in there a few years ago.
Yeah. And there's I remember when I headed for Joseph there that one year.
Yeah.
His butt was clenched to that back of that cantle. He's like, I don't want to be here, Chuck.
No, in 2019,
love it or hate it.
2019, I entered the trip in there, and that was the first year I ended up making the finals, and I was probably 13th or 14th that week. And I entered the Buston at Pendleton, and TG, which I used to live with TG, he's like, why would you do that? That's so stupid. I said, hey, I love this, man. Yeah. This is the most fun I have all year.
Exactly.
I bought 4 polys at Sheridan getting ready for this day. And I roped the first one around the neck. I caught the second one and tripped him, and my horse logged off. I borrowed my buddy Thomas Smith's horse, and the tail of my rope stuck straight up in the air, and my horse took off at a trot, and I was just dragging behind him trying to tie him. I ended up being like 19, and I'm like, that's the most fun I've ever had in my life. I mean, literally, anything goes, just wide open.
In and out of the arena.
Yeah,
anything goes. Yeah.
It's just so much fun. It feels like the Wild West over there.
So, do great at Pendleton. You won second?
Yep.
Did you win the short round?
I think so.
I think so,
too.
We
did.
And so you guys are right now, you're in the thick of it. You're inside the top 15. Now, do you have the Governor's Cup made at this point?
No.
So that was the last rodeo to get qualified for the Governor's Cup,
yes.
or was there a couple more?
That was maybe Abilene too,
Okay.
but I didn't enter Abilene because I was so far back in points.
Right.
My chance to get to go to the Governor's Cup was doing good at Pendleton.
So now you guys do good at Pendleton.
Yes.
Now you are
doing good at Puyallup. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And we didn't do good. We caught the first one. The second one fell down, and I missed him. And so after that, it was like our only chance is Pendleton.
Yeah.
And I was actually leaving Puyallup, and I don't really get worked up, and I was so upset because I mean, what is there, 12 teams, so there's probably 13, 14 steers in this pen. I draw one steer that is just wild.
Gotcha.
Wild. Bramer looking.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Jake, I said, man, that steer's wild. And Jake said, that makes 3 of us. And I said, well, you ain't wrong, but I mean, we can catch him, but it ain't going to be easy. And he runs out there and just cuts the horns off, and I turn in, and why I threw here, I don't know. I felt like I had him, and I just come around there and just cut it at him, and he falls down.
Right.
And I'm just like, why? Like, I know God put me in this situation. It felt like I keep slipping in the back door. Like I'm not supposed to. I don't get in any of the winter rodeos. Then I get in Colorado Springs, and I'm lucky enough.
They're pulling you in and taking you out.
I'm like, okay, this is my chance. So when I win Colorado Springs, I'm like, man, I get to go to Puyallup. That's my chance. That's where I'm going to make it up. And then I don't, and I'm like, well, I know there's a reason for all this, but it's almost where I'm just mad about it. I'm like, man, why does this keep happening? Like, I feel like I'm an all right guy. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? Why does this stuff keep happening? And then I'm driving down the road, and I'm talking to Jake on the phone. I'm like, man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He said, nobody's going to catch that steer. You got to call him. He said, it's not a big deal. You wasn't going to catch that steer. He was upside down. And I said, man, I know, but I'm just sorry for the situation. I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah.
And I'm driving down the road, and this guy locks his brakes up in front of me. And I'm like, oh, no. Brittany and Audie are asleep in the trailer because he goes to sleep at 7 o'clock. He never makes the perf, ever. And I just, as easy as I can, just slow down, and I'm like, I'm hitting this guy. I know it. So I just lock him up. My tires squeal just a little bit, and I hit this guy. Run right into the back of this guy. And I'm like, I just hit somebody. I got to go. So I get out of the truck. And this is like, I can't get over. There's a concrete deal here. I'm driving through Puyallup. I'm going 40 miles an hour. And it's 3 lanes.
The traffic there
it's
is so
awful.
close to like Seattle. The people drive terrible. Some of the worst places to drive.
Well, so I get out, and I'm thinking, like, I'm not a mean person at all, but I'm thinking, man, today is not the day. Like, this guy might give me an old-fashioned beat down right here, but I'm going to try to be nice, but just don't jack with me today. So I get out, and this guy's like, I said, man, I'm so sorry. I said, there was nothing I could do. I said, cars were coming to my left. There's concrete on my right. And cars obviously had stopped in front of him, but we was coming around a corner, and I just couldn't see him.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, man, no worries. Like, I know there's nothing you can do. He said, I was trying to give you as much room as I could. And I'm like, well, I mean, I appreciate this guy being nice. And I get out, and I look.
That's not common for cities.
No. And he's got a little receiver hitch on this Jeep, and I've got a ranch hand on my truck. The first one I've ever had in my life. I bought it from Jeff because he's traded trucks, and it wouldn't fit his new one. So I bought his old one. And I have a tiny dent in my ranch hand.
What did it do to his car?
Nothing. I hit the ball. And I'm thinking, when I got in the truck.
That's why you have a ranch hand.
I'm like, you know what? God, I get it. I need to calm down. I'm sorry. And so I asked this guy, I said, man, is there anything I can do? I said, my truck is fine. I said, I hit your hitch. I said, that is crazy coincidence, but I'm glad that's all that happened. I said, are you okay? He said, man, you wouldn't happen to have $5 for gas, would you? And I said, no, but I got a 20. Will that work?
Here's 20.
And I give him $20. I say, God bless you, man. Slap him on the back, shake his hand, and I go on. And I called Jake, and I said, well, I need to calm down. That's my – and then after all that, I thought, you know what? There's a plan to all this. I don't know what it is, but maybe this is what it took for me to realize, like, hey, I got this. You need to calm down. Just do what you know you got to do. Do the best you can. That's all you can do. And I was upset just because I know how hard it is to do good at Pendleton.
Yeah.
I've been there a few times now, and it's just like, man, you hate to put all your eggs in that one basket.
The stars have to almost magically align.
You have to. It has to be your week. That's what Begay said. You know, when they won it, he said, man, it has to be your week because there's so many variables. The steers. There's some that you can win on, and there's some that are strong that you're probably not going to win much on. And if you draw one of those, it's going to push you down in the callbacks. You know, it's just tough.
A lot of variables.
Lots.
So you guys do good there. You guys do great.
We did
So
good.
now, what, 2 or 3 weeks left? You're in the top 15.
Yes.
Tell me about the last few weeks to get to where you need to be. How many rodeos did you have left? You're entered to the guilds. How many rigs were out there?
You know, I had 6 or 7 left probably. We went to Albuquerque. We actually drove my rig from the slack at Pendleton. Jake was in there in the tripping over there.
Because you guys have to do it now the old-fashioned way because you don't have the Governor's Cup. So now you got to do it one rodeo at a time.
Trains, automobiles.
Until
any way we
September
can get
31st, the bell whistle goes off.
So we drive my rig with my wife and baby from Pendleton Slack. Jake tripped his steer, and he's been waiting on this one all night. He catches his first one, and he splits the horns on the second one, and he's instantly sad. You know, we're driving down the road, and we drive to maybe Tremont that night, and then we're headed to St. George. So we stop on the way to St. George, and Jake rents a little truck at the airport at Salt Lake. We drive to St. George, rope that night. We was 4-6, made a good run. And Jake and I, Brittany, we put her up at this little fairgrounds over there by St. George. Pretty good little spot. I can't remember what town it's in, just north of there. And she was going to drive on to Albuquerque the next day. So we get in this truck, this rental truck, and drive back after St. George, drive all night back to Pendleton. Roping
so she drives from St. George
to Albuquerque,
Utah, to Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yes, with an infant. 6-month-old, maybe at the time. And we drive back to Pendleton, roping the short round.
I don't know who's tougher, her or you.
Probably her.
Golly,
probably
that
her.
is.
And
that's a team player right there.
We barely had enough time to make it from the short round to Tri-Cities, I believe, Pasco. We drove like bandits.
So you guys win the short round, win second in the average, and then it's back.
What was bad was...
now it's time to haul butt to the airport.
Yes. We're watching the short round, and like Jake Smith and Doug, they were both going to go too. So by the time we roped, they was already in the parking lot. And we roped, and we're sitting around waiting to see, how we end up. And Ty Campbell, I'd never met him before. He comes up and introduces himself, and he's like, hey, congrats. I want you guys to stick around after this last team, if you went first for an interview. And I said, man, nice to meet you. No offense, these guys rope good. And it was Derek and Coulter, and I thought,
they're going to win it.
They're going to win.
Yep.
You're not going to keep these guys from winning.
I watched it.
Not this rodeo.
Like,
there's no chance.
Begay, no. Yeah. Coulter healed that sucker like it was just a...
Coulter wouldn't have missed that steer if he had no back legs.
Yes.
I mean, he would have figured it out.
Yes.
Anyways, so as soon as they catch, we hit a lope across the parking lot.
Rocking on.
And we lope out there, and I actually sent
ice
my
nails
horse...
on.
Yeah, ice nails and all. I tied my horse up to Bry Kreitz's trailer, and I went over there to the rental truck, and we stopped and picked up Jake and Doug, and we drove.
Now, who took care of the horses in Pendleton, and whose were they? Were they yours?
I had a little 6-year-old gray that I rode there. That was like its probably fourth or fifth rodeo.
Jiminy.
And he went back with Bry. Bry took him back. He was going to Welch.
Okay.
And so I thought, Bry's coming down for Stephenville and all that. And that's actually who I'm roping with next year. So, like, we was planning on going to some jackpots and stuff when I got back to the house, so he was just going to bring him home. So, anyways, Jake, his rig actually broke down in Walla Walla. It was at Troy Frazier's. So, he sent his horse home with Tiffany, Coleman's driver. And I had another horse, too. I cannot remember. Jake Long hauled him home because he ended up calling me, telling me he couldn't get him loaded on the trailer, which he was a little watchy anyways. But he was giving him trouble. He had mine and Coulter's horse, and he couldn't get either one of them loaded. And so I had horses in every state there for a while. I had a saddle and some tack and Bry's rig and a horse, and I had a horse in Jake Long's rig, which Jake Long lives maybe half a mile from me.
Right.
So it wasn't a big deal. But anyways, we had stuff scattered out. So we fly back to Albuquerque. We don't do good at Albuquerque. And then we drive back to my house. Jake rents a car and drives to Sapulpa, to his house, which is right there by Tulsa. And we went to Amarillo, Spring Hill, Stephenville, New Braunfels, and then the last night we flew to Mona.
Mona, Utah, right?
Mona, Utah, and that was the one that got away. And that one actually, we was in New Braunfels. I was 11th at the beginning of that week.
Yeah.
And everybody was telling me, dude, you're in
the Governor's Cup.
And
if you're almost not in the top 5, you're not sleeping.
No. And
too many chances right there for too many things.
Everybody was telling me that, and I said, look, I appreciate it, but there was like 7 guys that could beat me.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, it had to all go right.
But it can.
But it did.
And it did.
So I was in New Braunfels on Friday night, and I was up at Mona on Saturday. We had a flight out of DFW the next morning into Salt Lake. And I'm sitting there where we rope at New Braunfels. We had a pretty good steer, and it's just the craziest thing. Jake runs out there, cuts the horns off, pulls his slack, gets his slack under his right leg, and he loses his rope.
And where was this at? New Braunfels?
New Braunfels, Texas. Yeah. And he was so upset. And I said, dude, if you would have dallied, it would have flipped you off your horse. I said, don't kill yourself for this. I said, dude, I had all year. And so Dustin and Levi were up that night, and they had watched the Governor's Cup, and they had it all broke down, which they were both numbers guys. Right. I'm not a numbers guy. I just try to catch the steer. I figure if they're going to let me in, they're going to let me in. I keep up with my rodeos and stuff like that, just in case, because it makes me nervous.
Because when you went to Mona, so I remember talking to you afterwards, you said that was your 74th.
That was my 74th rodeo.
Because you didn't want to be at 75. I
didn't, because my member portal was saying that was number 75, and I had it as 74, and I'm like, I don't think I made a mistake. I went over it a bunch, and I thought back, and I kept looking back at my records and all that, and I'm like, man, I know that's 74.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was like, my last rodeo is going to be in Mona, Utah. If I go all the way out there, knowing that I had this going on, and for some reason I made a mistake, I would never let myself live it down.
Right.
It felt like the safe thing to do. And, Dustin and Levi told me, maybe it was Levi, I can't remember which one, and he's like, so this was when we thought Colby's money counted.
Right.
They were like, you need to win $970 some dollars or $80 at Mona. And I'm looking on there, and Mona's a great rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
Great rodeo. And I needed to be like 6 or 7 to win.
What you needed to do. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh. So I don't sleep a wink. I can't sleep. We get on this plane. It's early in the morning, and I'm just wide awake. Like, we get over there, and back up a little bit. I'm leaving New Braunfels, and my buddy Judd Jackson calls me because he knows what happened, and he sees what happened at Sioux Falls, and he's like, hey, are we driving to Mona? And I said, man, I don't think I can make it. I can't make it from here. I don't have enough time. And he said, well, I can leave from right here, because he lives a mile from me. And he said, I can get your horse and I can get him out there. And I'm like, man, I wouldn't ask you to do that. And he said, that's not what I said. What I said was, am I driving to Mona?
That's when you got a guy on your team right there.
And I said, well, I would never ask you to do that. And he said, I'll get in the shower right now and I'll leave. And it's 10:30 or 11 at night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not the time of day you want to be getting in just to drive south of Salt Lake, you know. So I said, man, if you don't care, because I had a horse and I just bought him from T. Woolman. Literally, the vet check was that day. And I vetted him that day and gave T a check. And he's like, man, I'll do it. I said, well, let's do it.
Get it on.
Let's do
this. Let's finish this thing.
And so Judd gets in his truck, in my truck, and his boy Coulter had just won a new stock trailer this summer at a jackpot. And I said, heck, let's break that trailer in, man. So he takes off driving, and he drives 17 and a half, 18 hours to Mona, Utah. And he said, under one condition, I'm flying back. He said, I am not driving back. I said, I'll buy your plane ticket. Yep. I don't care. Whatever I need to do. So he meets us out there. Me and Jake, actually, he called me, and me and Jake had got off the plane and rented a car, and we was out eating somewhere. And he said, what are you doing? I said, oh, we're eating some dinner. And he's like, man, that must be nice. I ain't had time. So he gets there, and great steer.
Yeah.
Like,
got the one you need.
Got the one we need. I'm like, in my whole life, I have looked forward to this situation. Like, I've always wanted to be that guy that's like, man, you have to win.
Here it is.
And this is your chance. It doesn't
Bottom
line
of the
up.
ninth, the score is
You've
tied.
run this steer a million times in the practice pen. Last steer to make the national finals.
Got
to go catch him.
Remember doing it on the cowboy toy?
Oh my gosh! In the living room, on the fast lane, everywhere.
Fast lanes.
In the goat pen, dude. I mean, everywhere. So this steer literally walks out, and he like almost barely breaks the neck rope. He gets into a trot, and I'm staying back. I'm like, I am not rushing this steer because he's going to stop. And he walks, takes off trotting to the right. And Jake just drills the barrier and just sounds it off on his horns. And I'm like, this steer has no chance. I'm going to rip him in half.
I'm going to hurt him.
Oh, I feel sorry for the steer. Like, I'm sorry, steer. You're never going to be the same. So I come around the turn and I just drill him. And I'm like, thank you. And I hold my slack up. And right whenever I go to dally, he pulls a leg. And it's just like, all the air in Mona, Utah, and I can't get any of it. It just lets the air out of me. Oh. And Jake, we get to the back, and he's like, man, I'm so sorry. He said, I feel like I quit you. I said, Jake, I had all year to win $1,000. It's not your fault. I know it came down to this one, but there was a lot of other places that I probably could have caught 2 feet and won $1,000. You know, I'm not going to put it on him. He's done a great job. And so at that point in time, I'm like, you know what? I did everything I could. I left it all out there. I'm going to have to drive home with this one horse and this stock trailer now. And I feel like I deserve it. You know, you catch 2 feet, you can laugh and giggle, and, you know.
It's amazing what happens when you win.
Oh.
You can drive for hours.
Yeah. So I take off driving, and Judd, he's sad. You know, Judd's one of my best friends, and he's like, man, I'm sorry. He's like, I don't know. I said, man, I don't either. It just didn't work the way we thought it was going to. So this is kind of back to the same spot I was at after Puyallup. I'm like,
there you are again.
I don't know. I don't know.
Try not to rear end somebody on the way home, but we're back to the same spot.
I'm just like, you know, I don't get it, but if I'm supposed to get in, maybe this is not, you know, we don't see God's plans the way that he does. Like, it's a lot bigger than we can even understand, so I try not to look too far into it. But I've also got 18 hours in the truck by myself. So I'm probably going to think about it, you know. And that one hurt more than any of them probably have. Just because I've caught some really big steers, you know. Like, I've caught some that changed the year.
Right.
But it's a lot harder to miss one of them. You know what I mean? To let one get by, and you're like, man, that could have.
That leg was your whole season.
That was my whole season. One steer, probably a steer that you could put in the 7 point at Mineral Wells on Sunday, and it just trot, lope. Yeah, I mean, it's a practice. I've got practice steers like that.
This is what you train your little colts on. This steer right here. You're up 2 feet on all the time. I roped steers like this all the time.
Yeah, and it was just like, just a steer that probably anybody was going to catch, and that's the one that got me. It was like.
So at that point in time, Peyton said you slept in your truck, front of your truck.
I did.
Dropped Judd off at the airport, and
Judd and Jake got in the rental car and drove to the airport, and I took off driving, and Judd was like, "Hey, you get sleepy, you pull over.
Yeah.
Do not do nothing crazy." And I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna drive till I get sleepy, and then I'll find someplace to put my horse." And I felt bad. This horse has been living with T Woman. He's been hanging out, going on the walker. T runs a few on him, and he's got a great life.
Got a good life. And all of a sudden, he's throwing in the freaking fire.
He just went 17 and a half, 18 hours in a stock trailer, which I just put him in the front cut. Threw a bunch of hay down and shut the cut gate, turned him loose.
Yeah.
That way he can spin around, whatever.
He can move if he needs to.
Yeah, he can lay down if he wants.
So we don't run into anybody.
Yeah, don't hit nobody. So I make it to Moab.
This is awesome.
I make it to Moab, and I pull down below across the track there, and they got some big old stock pins.
Yeah.
And I put him in one of those big pins, and
Moab, even in September, is still a little chilly at night.
Little chilly. And I threw him in that stock pen and watered him and threw him a bunch of alfalfa out there just because I'm like, man, this horse, he don't deserve this. Yeah. I got to let him chill out. And he laid around there and rolled and run around, whatever. And so I just got in the back seat and laid down, and I thought, you deserve this, man. Like, this is what you get for roping legs. And so I laid down in the back seat, and knowing that it was over, that's the best sleep I'd gotten in a month.
Right.
I
pressure's off, even though it's depressing, but golly, at least it's over with.
It sucks, but I said, you know what? I'm not going to let this ruin my life. When I get home, I got a kid. He doesn't know. He has no idea.
It's a great year. You got a little boy coming and gave him a good run at it. So a story you'll always remember.
Yep.
And at this point in time, you're out.
Yep.
You're 16th.
At that point in time, I by the way I've figured it, I'm 16th. But Colby's money never went in. So
So that's what, because I remember Team Roping Journal came out.
Yes.
Kobe's in. He won the first round.
Yeah.
He's in. Congratulations to Kobe. You had a chance right there at Mona.
Yeah.
Get a leg.
Yeah.
You're out.
Mm-hmm.
But the standings never changed.
They never changed.
I remember at home being on the stands and the sidelines watching it.
Yeah.
Because I have to figure out who my top 15 is for my NFR showdown for the military event that I put on. And I'm like, what is going on here? I'm calling all the guys like, hey, what's going on? Well, the word out between the top 15 guys is like, well, but man, it sounds like Kobe might have went to one too many rodeos. It sounded like they might have told him he had too many rodeos.
Yeah.
So as of right now, they don't have him in because he hadn't been to enough because he went to too many rodeos.
Yeah.
His 76 rodeos, for everyone to know, in the team roping, you get 75 rodeos. You can only count 75. You can go to as many as you want.
Yeah.
But when you call in, or I don't think you call in anymore, when you enter it, you can unofficial it. So if you want to go to a little rodeo around the house, it's a PRCA rodeo, you can go to it, and unofficial it doesn't count towards your rodeo standings. But you only get to count 75 rodeos towards the NFR World Standings money won. And so it comes down to it. He is at 76.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're out. Now you're back in all of a sudden. But no one really knows.
Nobody knows. And that's what the next morning, Judd actually called me. And he's like, man, how you making it? And I talked to him. And I told him, I said, man, you know what? I hate this situation, but at this point I'm at peace with it.
Yeah.
I know because I'm driving back by myself with a stock trailer on. I literally just woke up in my back seat. I know that I give it all I have.
Right.
There's no doubt that I'm like, you know what? If I was on a plane right now, I would be like, you're such a baby. You got to drive that. So I was like, you know what?
You and Chad Masters, you just make a way to torture yourself.
I'm like, I give it all I had. And he said, well, I guess you didn't get the same email that Jake Clay did this morning. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm terrible at checking emails.
Right.
So I look on my phone and I got an email. and it's wanting my jacket size and stuff and saying congratulations, you're in
Ring
the top
size,
15.
jacket
Yeah,
size.
you're in the top
You're in the
15
show,
as
baby.
of October 1st, and I'm like, I literally just got over this, like not a few hours ago. Like, come on,
Now
guys.
you're
like,
baiting me back in again.
I'm like, hey, are we? What's going on?
This is like dating a crazy girlfriend.
Yes.
I'm in, I'm out. They're in,
Yeah.
they're off. They're like
Yeah.
Jiminy Christmas.
So I kind of call around, and I ended up, I texted Steve Knowles, and I was like, hey, I understand this is a busy time for you. I hate to bother you. I'm trying to figure out why I get this email, because I think I'm 16th. I said, I know all the money's not in. I don't know why that's the only guy that doesn't have his money in, but we've all figured it. It's not, it's not hard to figure that. So he was like, hey, don't give up. We don't know what's going on. Basically, like,
They're looking into it.
well, they're looking into it. So I'm like, you know what, maybe. And but I try not to let myself think like. So then.
Try not to lead yourself into setup for failure.
Yeah,
almost.
because I've already went through this
Yeah.
just yesterday, and so I actually called Steve that next morning. I just wanted to hear him out and see what was going on, and he was like, we think that was his 76th rodeo. That's why the money's not in. And I was like, okay, well, I said, well, just keep me updated. I'd kind of like to know.
So now you're in. Now you're back in again.
So they once
Somebody
they
even
figured,
said that you guys had a. Do you guys have an NFR party? Did Brittany throw an NFR party?
No, we didn't.
Somebody thought that they did. I was like, oh my gosh, that would be a high and a low.
I wouldn't have let her. Not this year. And so
now Kobe files a grievance.
Well, so Steve Knowles, he called me a couple days after that or whatever, and he was on top of this. Him and Tom, I'm telling you, these guys were on top of it. They didn't do anything but try to. I think that help both of us. Obviously when you've got something, they're going to look into it. So,
right.
Anyways, he calls me and he's like, "Hey, that was his 76th rodeo. You're in. As far as I'm concerned, if I were you, I would practice." And I obviously I'm happy. I'm excited. You don't want to see somebody go through that. That sucks.
Yeah.
Because the way I looked at it, I had a chance.
Yeah.
And I
remember when I talked to you after Mona, you're like, man, this is my fault.
I dropped the ball.
You totally owned it.
Yeah, I could have.
No other team roper I hardly know.
I could have avoided that situation. But I didn't.
That was a stand up. When I talked to you, like, man, I had a shot. This was I should never be in this situation.
Yeah, and it hurt. It hurt me a lot
but
because that would have meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
That one steer, it would have been like
that story
no matter what, they can't take that away from me.
Yeah.
And then it's just like you're in limbo and you don't know if you're in or you're out, and you're like, you know what, I could have changed that. This one's on me. So they call me and they tell me that I'm good, you know, whatever. And he said, we got to do the audit, but nothing's going to change. He said, is there any money that you think that you're missing? And I said, no, I think everything's good. I just, I'm either 15th or 16th, one or the other. So audit comes out. Well, then everybody starts freaking out, like, oh, you're in. And everybody's texting me, and I'm like, yeah, but this is when, after the audit, if you have a grievance, that's when you file it, after the official audit. So that's when they went through the grievance process, and they did all that stuff. And so that's, to me, it said I was in, but I knew that it wasn't over. And then that's when we got into the whole grievance deal, and then it got wilder from there. It seems.
Now what is it? Now what is it? 2 weeks out before the NFR.
Yes.
Kobe wins his appeal.
He wins his appeal,
and I read in the Team Roping Journal, Kobe gets in with 76 rodeos.
Yes,
they even just when you read it, it was like, now that don't make no sense.
Well, and I don't really know. Why it went that way, because I asked, Steve Knowles told me, he said, because I asked him, I was like, hey, when do we expect to know, when is all this going down? And he said, look,
because didn't that grievance take a month for Kobe?
It took a month. And he said...
And now it drops 2 weeks before the NFR.
Yes.
Then now Kobe's in.
Yes.
So now you have to file a grievance, correct?
Right. So...
And you're running out of time.
Yes. So he tells me, he's like, if you want to be on that call, because they're over a Zoom call, he's like, if you want to be on that call, you're more than welcome. And I said, well, is it going to change anything? And he said, no. Which, he didn't think so. Which, I'm like, hey, if you don't think it's going to change nothing, I don't want to be involved in this. You know, I don't want it to make it seem like it's me against Colby. I got nothing.
Yeah, you guys are not enemies.
Yeah, we're
here.
friends. I don't have nothing to say. But anyways, so it goes that way. Well, he calls me, Steve Knowles calls me that day, and he's like, hey, I'm sorry, but they you know, Colby won his grievance or whatever. They said they were going to allow him to count 76. And I'm like, man, I don't think that's right. You can only go to 75, you know? I mean, like, you obviously hate to see that because last rodeo of the year, he thought it was 75 and he nails the steer to win $10,000. Like, and that's pretty clutch right there.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it's like, well, if that is number 76, then that's a terrible situation, but it doesn't count. It's unofficial. So I said, well, I don't know if you know it or not, Steve, but I don't really have a lot of time. What do I need to do? And he said,
you're running real short on time because that last one took a month.
Yeah, he said, you need to file a grievance. And I said, Steve, I don't know if you know this or not, but the last one took a month and I ain't got a month. He said, well, we're going to do what we can. I said, okay, perfect. So I actually, I'm not the best public speaker, dang sure not in that situation, because I'll get to talking in circles and not making sense, and if I get a little upset, it's even worse. It's you know, when I'm trying to get to my point, but I don't know how to get there. It's just like I know I'm not going to make sense to these guys. These guys are on a completely different wavelength than me, anyways. They're way smarter than I am, so I got in contact with a lawyer, and I was like, look, I don't know. I mean, everybody in the team roping world knew what was going on.
Right.
He was a team roper. He understood everything. He knew what was going on. And
so your lawyer was a team roper.
Yeah, and he went to bat for me. And,
wisdom, yeah.
And he just went and you know, kind of read the rules, you know, and like, this is what rules you guys are breaking. And ended up we filed a grievance. He sent in a formal letter filing a grievance and all this, and we got it started, and they kind of expedited it and got it rolling, and then they ended up actually reconsidering Colby's, so we never really got to mine. They went back and reconsidered it. I think maybe the PRCA's lawyer realized hey, we can't really do this. It's just opening a door that once we open this door, we can't close it. And I hate to be the guy that says that you don't really want to take 16. But it's like, at the same time, it's like, man, we just can't. They did it last year in the bull riding.
Done it before.
Yeah, it's not the first time, but at the same time, it's like, man, we just can't do this every year.
Yeah.
If we keep doing it.
PRCA, get better.
Yeah.
Surely, with all the technology,
it's
you can figure this out.
And I get it, they told him wrong. That sucks.
And I understand that.
That's terrible.
Right, that's what, and that does, but the lesson... You take your own notes. You write them all down because you can't. There's too many variables for them to be able to keep up with every contestant as well.
And I knew that it was always the PRCA's stance that it's on you to keep up with your records.
Remember Chad Masters.
But there is a rule that reads, I don't know exactly, but unless, regarding information that you're going to use, unless it is in writing and after the official audit, to use it at your own risk. So that means basically anything they tell us at Procom, it's kind of just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, usually if I call up there, I had to do it a couple times this year. I knew how many rodeos I'd been to, but my deal was off, my portal was off, so I called up there and would just kind of ask them what the number was, just to kind of double check myself. And a few times it was off. I know one time for sure I had to unofficial and turn out at Linden, Washington, because I conflicted it with Caldwell. Because Linden was a circuit rodeo for me, and it's a great rodeo. I wanted to get to it to get one more circuit rodeo under our belt, and We just got popped and couldn't go.
Right.
And so in that situation, you can conflict it and unofficial it. You still got to pay your fees and turn the steer out, but you get the rodeo back, so it doesn't count. So they had me official at that one, and I called up there, and they knew, they fixed it.
Right.
So, I mean, it just sucks. You don't want to see that happen to anybody.
No.
But it just kind of goes down to, I mean, they can't, the PRCA just couldn't hardly not follow the rules. And that's all it was. It wasn't, it didn't have anything to do with me and Colby. I mean, I just felt like
no one's no ill of no one, and
No.
Kobe's going off of what they're telling him, and he's trying to do the best he can, and then it turns out they were wrong, and
it was just a messed up situation.
How mentally draining, up and down, and just a roller coaster of the emotions.
Just knowing that, like that day when I got that call, I thought, my whole year has been back and forth, and I'm just like, seriously, again? Like, here we are again, like 2 weeks before the finals, and I don't know if
You're
I'm
still
going
in
to get
limbo.
in. And I'm practicing over there at Brenton's, and as soon as I get off the phone, I said, heck, Brent, I guess just run them down there now. I don't really need to turn in very fast. I mean, it looks like we're not going. So it was just back and forth.
And so now for the last time, then when the news dropped. So now, was it last week?
And it would have been last Monday.
Last Monday. So a week and a half out, close to a week and a half out.
Yeah.
They change it again.
They went back and they reconsidered it.
Now
and they
you're
took
back
a
in.
vote. I'm back in as of now. That's what Begay's been telling me since I've been out here. Every time we do something, we went and checked in the other day, and he's like, "Well,
still see your name.
You're still in right now." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I mean, heck,
yeah.
Who knows now?"
And then now they just canceled the rodeo.
Yeah, they canceled it, and I'm like,
now
"Well,
another chance.
Tonight I'm supposed to be running one right now, and we still
hoping they call your name."
Yeah, I mean, there's still a chance.
So, have you and Jake Clay got to practice much through this whole ordeal? I know you guys were at the military roping together.
We went there, and I went up there to his place it was like a Wednesday through a Sunday. I got there probably Wednesday evening, and we roped, and we run. I mean,
it's random.
Yeah, we ran them. I mean, probably 60 or 70 a day. We got
Rocky
after
Balboa,
it. And we had a blast. I headed some for him, and actually we probably run 8 steers that way, and we're 100%. At one point, Jake asked me if we could switch ins.
Just in case.
I mean, we never missed that way.
Love it.
But I mean, we had a lot of fun. Which Jake, as soon as he got home, he had the arena set up.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been roping in that setup for 3 months.
Yeah.
Now. He was
because he's excited. This is number one for him.
Number one, and there's not a guy that loves team roping more than that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Luke Brown maybe.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna ask you, can he beat Luke?
But I'm saying this guy loves it because at one point we had like 14 muleys, 16 steers. 2 donkeys and a big goat. A big goat.
And a goat.
Yeah, we had all that in the pen. He's like, heck, I just wanted to mix it up a little bit. His donkeys are speeding rich. I mean, so we got after it. We had fun.
I love it. So when I was a young kid growing up in the 80s, my hero, one of my biggest heroes, man, like I wanted a blue nylon breast collar with, I think it was goat hair on her. I forget what that thing was that the 4-H guys had that everyone made fun of, but not Bobby Hurley. Bobby Hurley was rank. He made a goat fuzz or sheep skin, whatever it was. I remember what it looked like. I can't remember what it was called. He made that cool. I wanted one.
Yeah.
Had the coolest curly mullet. Had the big goggle glasses with and then behind the lenses had the rope on it, so in case them big suckers fell off, he didn't lose his glasses. I had those.
Yep.
I had those, by the way. Had 1 yellow horse or 2 yellow horses in the 80s when he was coming in.
2.
Was one horse of the year?
One that was his name was Bar Smug. He was by a horse named Smug Reed. Brittany and I actually have some of those Smug Reed horses. We've got some. It goes back to Smug Reed.
The BH on his left hip.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe so.
I was a fan back in the day. I was like the Peyton Bray.
Yeah.
I knew these guys as I followed them.
Oh yeah.
He stayed at my house one time. Him and Dennis Gates when they were in their heyday, and 2 of the greatest storytellers.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, great rodeo stories after another. And then the 90s come, and he's now Spiff.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Which was dirty. This horse, he was like glass, man.
Yeah.
He was just so smooth how he did everything. He was like Fonzie, man. He was a cool ass head horse. Didn't he have his tongue hanging out half the time?
Maybe. Brittany actually, I think she's actually breakawayed some steers on him when she was little.
Oh, he was rank. Wins the world in 93, if I remember right. Win the last 5 rounds at the NFR.
Yep.
And then wins the average, I think, in 95 with Valbach. And wins. How many times did he win the world?
He won it twice, 93 and 95, because 93 was the year that both Brittany and I were born. So that was
that's right.
That's pretty cool.
He was one of the rank guys, man. He was one of my guys. He was one of my heroes.
Yeah.
And that just happens to be your father-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
What's that like? Tell me what that's like.
Man, it's a cool perspective because, like, me growing up, nobody rodeoed. I mean, I remember when I was 15 years old, I started having some guys around the house haul me around to some amateur rodeos, and my dad had to tell me, like, hey, you might miss, but you got to throw your rope. You got to throw fast. You're not going to win nothing if you just track around there and catch them. And I'm like, that's all you had to say, Dad. Like, thank you. And I remember the very next day, I think, we went to the U.S. roping in Berryville was going on. And like, then, this roping was huge. I mean, that was around my birthday every year, and that's where I would go get my birthday presents because they would have that Steer Crazy booth set up, and if you wanted a classic rope, like, you got it there. Mm-hmm. So I would always get me maybe a couple ropes and some boots, and I didn't even ride boots on my horses, but it was like they got them, and, you know, I wanted them for my birthday. Anyways, I was roping in the 9. There were some number 5s that asked me to rope the next day, and I'm like, you know, I had roped in the 8 points, you know, heeling. Well, this was before I was younger when this was happening, but I remember this is when he told me I could throw faster. So I lied about being 15. I think I was 12 or 11, maybe 12. And so these guys asked me to rope in the 9, some of my dad's friends, and I'm like, man, this is cool. But I'm like, man, this is a 9 point. I'm going to have to go ahead and cut it at them. Mm-hmm. And I missed for both guys, and I mean, I threw in the turn. And my dad, I was a kid, and he made me go up and offer to pay their fees back, you know, and I felt awful, which I hold myself pretty accountable, and I'm like, man, I really messed up there. I'm sorry, because obviously my dad's paying my fees, you know, I don't have any money, and that was a pretty good lesson to me, but it was just like, you know, there's one roping you might get to go to every month, and you needed to win, like. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like now in Stevensville we're so spoiled. There's ropings to go to all the time.
Almost every day.
And even like the difference between like the way I grew up and like Bobby rodeoed for a living. You know, like he did what we all dreamed of and was successful. And I mean, my dad's a very hard worker. He's worked his whole life, and that's what he told me. You know, you have to get an education and you need to get a job. You need to make money and take care of yourself. You know, that's how I was raised.
Right.
And I remember when he told me that, like, hey, you can maybe do this. It was Zach Small and I came out. We bought our cards just so we could enter Cheyenne. We was circuit rodeoing, and that was in 2015. And we left home with, I had like a 2000 Dodge and a little 3-horse Hart trailer, and it wasn't finished out, but it had an AC. And I was like, dude, I got 11 quarters. Like, this is awesome. Yeah. And I would sleep in that thing any chance I got just because I'm like, it's right here. I got an AC, even if it's 40 outside. I mean, if it gets hot, I cool off. Anyways, I filled it up before I got to Zach's because I was leaving for like 3 weeks. And that was crazy to me. Like, I was maybe, you know, I just maybe got out of college and I was about to leave. And I was like, man, he lived 2 hours from my mom and dad's. And I thought, if I get home and I have no money and I have to have Zach spot me on the way home, at least I'll have enough fuel to get back to my mom and dad's so I can go work or do something. And, you know, I'll be okay. And we left and we won like, I don't know, maybe 30 grand. We won second at the Spicer Grip. We won Sykeston. We placed at maybe Deadwood. I mean, we won a bunch. And mostly circuit rodeos, but we would kind of sneak off and go to some bigger ones here and there. And we won quite a bit of money. That's more money than I'd ever won in my whole life. And he was like, hey, you know, you can maybe do this. Like, you need to try this on. And I was like, just been waiting on somebody to tell me that. Like I'd been living, with Billy Jack and working and riding horses and stuff, and I couldn't believe that they were paying me to rope. Everybody told me my whole life, like, you can't rope for a living. You just can't do it. It's crazy. And I'm like, guess what they're paying me to do? I'm getting paid to rope. I had enough money to buy a couple heel ropes at the feed store and pay my fees at the amateur rodeos on the weekends, and I'm like, I can do this for the rest of my life. And I'll have more fun than anybody on the planet. Like, this is the best life I could ever ask to live. And I was living in an RV there at Duke's house right next to Billy Jack's apartment. We had the biggest time. I mean, we had a blast. We loved it. And but my dad telling me that, it was like, man, that was all I needed to hear. And that meant a lot to me.
Right.
To know that it was like, it wasn't just a pipe dream. And even then I wasn't ready. But I don't know if he just saw something in me, but that was the first time, like, that's what I'm getting to. Like, Bobby, that's what he did. That was a reality. So when Brittany and I got together, it was like, okay, so what are you doing? Like, where are you going? And wanting the breakdown. But he'd been there.
Yeah.
I hadn't really been around anybody. I guess, Billy Jack, when he made it, that was after I had moved to Stephenville, but I'd never really been around, those guys like that expect to make the finals.
Right.
And so,
because he was a legend, man.
He was the man.
Frank. He was the man.
And it was just like, he told me when I started roping with Jake Barnes, that was when Brittany and I first started dating. He said, you need to get in there and you need to be quiet and you need to catch 2 feet.
Be a sponge.
That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
You need to catch 2 feet. And it was cool because Jake and Bob are buddies.
Yeah.
So I would call Bobby, and him and Jake would talk back and forth.
They were like
and
Marvel and Haggard.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
was it Hagler and Sugar Ray?
Yeah,
Sugar Ray Leonard.
I
Man,
was
those guys
like,
had some battles back in the day.
This is cool. Like I remember, Bobby actually found the Mega, or maybe
Mega
Trish.
Match.
She found the Mega Match.
I loved it. I loved that.
And
thing.
we all got in there and sat on Brittany's bed, and we had the Mega Match.
And it's tied
to 29.
That was a good one.
And we was watching the Mega Match, and I had Bobby Hurley right here, and we had Jake Barnes on the phone, and they were trash talking each other, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing.
This is the coolest thing in the world.
This is because
that's every kid my age's dream.
Because
right
I'm a fan. I mean, when I was a kid, before I was old enough to...
I wore that VHS tape out.
I watched the BFI every day. 99 and 2000, Charles Pogue and Brett Buckus. I mean, I would rope. I would watch the roping, go outside, rope my goat. I'd heel her. She'd get to where she wouldn't run anymore. I'd go inside, lay under the fan, and watch a few more rounds. And I would get through 2 BFIs every day. That was what my day looked like. Because I wasn't old enough to work. And I'm like,
all of us.
That's all. But that's all I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I put all my eggs in that basket. I can't really do a whole lot else,
There you are.
So, I mean, it was.
That's cool.
But it was, Bobby's, it's been cool to just talk to him about it because, he puts a lot of perspective into it, like a different perspective. He had, he's got 4 kids, rodeoed. Like, he's been there. He knows it's going to be hard at sometimes, And he'll be the first one to tell me if I need to go home. He's like, hey, it ain't working. You need to try her again. Go home, regroup. And that's nice just to have that because I think if a guy hasn't been out here and hasn't really been in the mix, it's hard to...
You're able to get there faster with some knowledge behind you, as opposed to so many guys out here.
As opposed to me just driving around.
You're just figuring it out on your own until you're learning it. You almost knock off a half a decade just having some wisdom behind you.
And Jake helped me a lot with that too.
Yeah.
Jake actually told me when Brittany and I started dating, he's like, do you think you're going to marry her? And I was like, yeah, heck, I'd like to. And he's like, well, what are you waiting on? I said, well, I don't have any money. He's like, well, you're never going to have enough money. You might as well just do it. And I was like, I think I won't. And a couple months later, I asked her. I'm like,
think I won't.
Heck, I got no. I mean, if she says no, I mean, I guess I don't know what
process of.
I don't know what we're gonna do. Yeah, I mean, but I knew. I mean, obviously, I knew then. I was like, I'm not really. It's not like I'm looking for something else.
Right.
This is who I want to be with. And I was like, well, he makes a good point.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do it, do it. And it's kind of funny. I don't know if he was being serious or if he was just jacking with me, but whatever it was, it worked. We've been together since 2018, so
Heck yeah.
but it's kind of funny just the way that worked out. But
That's awesome.
those guys like that, it's pretty cool to get to visit with them and you know, T. Woolman, me and him talk a couple times a day probably.
Those guys were grinders, man.
Oh, yeah.
Though. You know, you put those guys in situations like in wars and like Vikings. Those were the guys, man. Those guys were slaying dragons.
Yeah.
Those guys rodeo without ACs.
Yes.
They rodeoed the hard way. When
they
there
had to
was
stop at a
no
payphone.
limits.
Yeah.
Yes, they entered in payphones, which a lot of kids don't even know what the heck that is. You know, those guys were the guys, man.
Yeah.
They were warriors.
It
that's
doesn't get
legendary.
any cooler than that
Yeah.
when you talk about that. And that's kind of funny that me and Bobby was talking a couple days ago, and talking about what I was planning on riding and stuff. And he told me, because I bought a horse from T, the same one I rode at Mona. I was actually going to change his name to Mona if I won enough to get into the finals.
But we're not.
But we're not now.
Yeah.
We're trying to forget about that. But anyways, I told Bobby, I was like, man, that horse he's a really good horse. He's simple. Like there's no, it's just not, my horse feels like fast forward a lot. It's just wide open. And I don't know if he's that fast, but he feels fast. It feels like we are flying. It feels like inside a small building like that, it just feels like a bad pinball game. Like it feels like I might break to the pin, I might go to the fence and then come back, and I know I'm going to get there, but it's just the fact of how fast am I going to be going when I get there?
Yeah.
Is my hat going to be upside down? Like, am I going to be able to throw, or am I going to be pulling the whole time? And so that's what I told Bob. I said, man, this other one, it just feels simple.
Yeah.
Like I just put my hand down and I just roped the steer. And he said, well, heck, you know, that's kind of when I crack Spiff out there. And I said, well, heck, maybe.
Let's do it.
Might as well. I mean, it's not like I don't have another option.
So what horse are you going to start off on tomorrow night?
That's the one that I bought from T.
Have you named him yet?
His name is Peso.
Peso.
That's what T called him.
I'm just going to stick with that.
Yeah,
Be good to win some pesos out here.
I don't change their names, man. I don't like that. That seems dangerous to me. I know he came from Bobby Lewis. Okay. Joe rode him quite a bit, I think, and
so he knows the game. Then.
Yeah, that wasn't his name then, but T's had him for 5 years, and man, the thing about T, he gets them so patterned.
Yeah.
Like that horse knows his job.
Yeah.
He knows no matter what, and T don't put up with nothing. I mean, they're gonna do their job, and they don't jack with you. They just go do their job. They stand there. You know, it just seems like they take out a lot of the unnecessary stuff.
Right. Good.
I think he's just gonna let me do my job, and it's not gonna be near as full contact as it could be.
Good.
On my other horse.
So you ran the steers through Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
What do the steers feel like? What do you feel like kind of ropes do you feel like you're getting ready for that situation? What are the steers, the legs, the freshness, the size?
Yeah.
What are all the variables in that?
Obviously, the only time I got to rope out here was in 19, and it felt like there was a lot of solid blacks. And it seems like when you get into the solid black Mexicans, like in the slick, you know, they're strong, pound the ground when they turn, and
not much room.
Not much room, and that's
if they hit fresh. It's not like you got 4 hops.
No, you gotta
have 3, but you need by 2 or 1.
And so these ones, it seemed like there was a lot more. I counted 5 Herefords, and I love Herefords.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen a Hereford that I didn't like, and so. I was talking to somebody about that the other day. I was like, man, what about all these Herefords? We could almost have a Hereford pin. Like, instead of speed, like, we could sort them by color. And it didn't seem like there was as many of them that were. I mean, there's dang sure a few of them in there that are full contact.
Yeah, they're grown.
But it seemed like, as a whole, there was a really good set of steers. Good. And they're going to, and even, like, because I told Jake, I said, man, it's going to feel like, the hardest thing to replicate is how hard the steers leave. And I didn't get that until I came out here the first time. It was like, man, it feels like the whole time they're leaving you.
Yeah.
And
then you have to somehow outrun the rope.
Yeah.
And
you
get
have
around
to,
that sucker.
You have to take the shortest line, and you have to be there.
There can be no wasted movements, no wasted steps at all.
And that's what I told him. Even when the first time through, they roped him and followed him out the back. And some of them didn't start. And it was crazy. The second time through, when we roped them and made a run on them, they were leaving.
Yeah.
And not all of them, but for the most part, it was crazy.
My first year here, I remember they kept telling me how fast it was. Well, when we first ran them through that day on Tuesday, they were kind of breaking.
It's like, this ain't that bad.
No. First round, it was a blur.
Yeah.
It was so fast, like nothing I'd ever seen.
Yeah. It's and that's what...
Can't even describe that to people, like how fast they leave from there.
It just feels like... I told somebody after the first time, they said, what's it feel like? I said, it feels like you shouldn't be allowed to do what you're doing in that small amount of space.
Yeah.
It feels borderline dangerous. Like, man, we shouldn't be doing this in here, but they're letting us. Like, nobody's stopping us.
I love it.
So it's...
Good.
But Jake, he was hanging it on him. He was doing a good job.
Yeah, but I believe it, man. That dude is so handy. Yeah. So handy. So what ropes do you feel like? What lays? What do you got in the rope bag?
Went back and forth all year. When I got home last summer and I was going to those circuit rodeos, George McQuain, which him and I are buddies, we talk all the time. And he's like, hey, I want you to try some of these ropes. Which when I get home, I think everybody's the same way. They're like, I just want to try something different, So I started using these MB4s, and man, I loved them. And I always wanted to use them, but I was like, I got to use a power line. I just have to. And so I went to using them, and heck, I probably won more with an NV4 than I've won with a power line my whole career. And I'm like, well, what am I doing? Use them if you like them. So I used them all winter, and I used them up until the 4th of July. I roped like 5 legs that week of sisters, and I'm like, I'm using power line. I'm doing it. So I used power line, and I did a little bit of good, but then I missed the first steer at Kennewick, and I'm like, I want to use what I like. If I'm going to throw that loop, I'm going to be using something that I like. So I had some stashed away in my trailer still, and I went to using them, and I told George, I was like, because he's always messing with me, and he was like, are you going to go back to those power lines, or are you going to actually keep using them? He said, yeah, everybody always wants to do something. They go back to the power line. I said, I'm a lifer now. I'm NV4 for life. And so that's what I've been using them. I think I use a hard medium, and
is there a certain stiffness you kind of like a little bit in the way they lay, to where when the steers are fresh and strong like that?
Which I've always been in my head about that. Like I've always been like, big, strong Mexicans got to use a power line. And then I came to that outside roping out here last year at the Matthews Landing Cattle one, and that was tough conditions. Ground was deep. Steers were huge, huge old Mexicans. They were sweet set of steers. And I used maybe one rope. I entered with 3 partners, and I used one NV4 all day. And I think I caught them all. I can't remember how many it was, but I caught them all by 2 feet. And I'm like, because I thought that day when I showed up and I saw those steers, I thought, power line wouldn't hurt right here. And I'm like, nope, you're not doing it. So that's what I brought, probably 20 NV4s with me. That's my option. That's what I'm sticking with, because I feel like, for whatever reason, that's what I like. They got enough weight, but they're not just huge. I feel like I can get ahead of them if I need to. I can kind of change up a little bit. I don't feel like it's all I can do to get them going fast. And then I told Hunter Cook the other day, I asked him if he needed to borrow my rope. He said no, he's using a power line. And I said, well, that's a young man's rope. I said, I'm 30 years old, man. I can't do power lines no more. I'm getting too old for that.
That's funny.
And so that's kind of a joke, but I feel like that last winter, I feel like that was probably the best that I've ever roped in my whole career. And I used that rope, and I'm like, well, if I could do that with that rope, I know it's not the rope. I know, we all get in our head about what we need to use and all that. But if it's something you like, I mean, Corey Petzka is the perfect example. He uses like a medium soft.
Yeah.
And he can heal them just as good as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, I mean, my rope's obviously stiffer than that.
You know what works for you.
Yeah. You know what you like,
Yep.
and there ain't nothing wrong with that.
Heck yeah. I love it. Well, man, I wish you and Jay Clay the best of luck this week. You guys are going to tear him up, man. You're such a good dude, man. It's great knowing you. Thank you for taking the time. It's a busy week. Thanks for taking the time to come out here and do a podcast. And how do we follow you? Do we follow you at all, or we just got to wait till you win something and come out and team up with
my wife has a Facebook. My wife keeps it updated. I have an Instagram, but I don't. She has it on her phone. She gets on there and checks and messages and stuff like that, and so usually like people will tag me and stuff on there, and I can see it sometimes, but I don't have none of that stuff. So
I love it, man.
But Brittany she does a good job.
Yeah, awesome.
Maybe she'll get some friend requests or some follows out of this deal. I would love that for her to get a bunch of requests off of this.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. We'll kill him this week. Do good, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.